Hey guys, I am back for another video. This one's going to be a bit more chatty and super personal, but I thought it was something that I'd like to share with you guys. You guys know bits and pieces of my birth story and about Alaska, but I thought I would share from beginning to end just kind of my experience and the story and kind of how it all happened. But I really wanted to focus on my experience and then also just a few words of advice, maybe some encouragement, some uplifting words, maybe something that if I would do over again, things I would change. So I thought I would just add my 2 cents in about my personal experience and story and let you guys know how it was to be a young teen mom and also the experiences of being a single mother raising her and then also that whole birth story as well that I've never gotten to share. So I was 18 when I got pregnant. I just turned 19. It was in between those few months. My birthday is November 7th, and I found out a few weeks afterwards, and I told my family on Thanksgiving Day. It was a shock for all of us, and we really didn't enjoy the turkey all that much just because it was such a big shock. But I started feeling really, really nauseous towards the end of October, around Halloween time, and I was starting to feel really sick, but my period was always really late, and it was always just inconsistent. That's how my body's been my entire life. So I just thought that that was it. I didn't throw up at all the entire time, but I did start to feel a little bit nauseous and sick. So that's when I took the pregnancy test eventually, and I think I was like 6 or 8 weeks in, and that very first appointment I was able to see the ultrasound because I was so far in and I had no idea. I think some women are so in tune with their bodies that they know like within the first few weeks, and some women like me are not, I guess, in tune with their bodies, and they had no idea, and I didn't know. It was really weird for me. I remember a few nights just feeling really, really nauseous and sick while I was lying in bed, and I thought, could it be? And eventually I took a pregnancy test. I got it from CVS. Her dad bought it for me. I went to a Starbucks bathroom because I couldn't take it back home. I didn't want my parents to find out right away, so I took it to the nearest Starbucks, and I went into the bathroom, and I was waiting in line, and there was a mom carrying a stroller and like 2 babies, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, is this really happening to me right now? And then the 2 lines came up, said I was pregnant, and I was just in shock. I didn't believe it. I didn't think that it was possible for some reason. I didn't think it was possible, and I was like, no, this is a mistake. This is wrong. Like, I was thoroughly convinced that it was wrong. So I went to the hospital actually, and then I couldn't even say it out loud. I looked at the receptionist and I said, can you give me a piece of paper? And I wrote down, I think that I might be pregnant. Can I take a pregnancy test? And she said yes, and she gave me a cup to pee in, and I did. And so anyway, long story short, they called me back. Yes, I was obviously pregnant. And from then on, I just experienced a world of emotions. I was terrified. I was scared. I felt very inadequate. And I also just felt very lost and alone. Her dad and I weren't on great terms when that happened. And so it was really scary for me. And we also weren't married or in a really, really committed relationship. We were a little bit rocky. So it was difficult for me. And I felt very, very, very alone. I felt very scared and very alone. So from then on, I made an appointment. I found an OBGYN. I had an older friend who was actually a church mentor, and she had a daughter already. And so I asked her what her OBGYN was, and I just went to the same one because I had never even been to one before. So I booked an appointment, and I went in, and I was already so late in the pregnancy. It was like 8 weeks or so, that I was already able to see that little ultrasound sonogram picture of Alaska. And so I saw the picture, I was sitting there in the little hospital gown that they give you, and I was just terrified. Like As soon as the doctor left the room, she was like, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And I sat there, I held it, and I just started crying. I just started bawling, and I didn't know what to do. So at that point, I was kind of evaluating my choices. There was, obviously, there's abortion. I can keep the baby, or I could give the baby up for adoption. And at 19, I felt like I was completely, there was no way I could raise a child. It wasn't even an option to me, kind of. So I called and I made an appointment for an abortion consultation. That's what it was called. So you have to talk to the doctor, I'm assuming. I didn't go, but I made the appointment, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm certain of it, and I felt like that was the best and only choice. No one would find out, and I felt like that would just be really, really simple for me to kind of get rid of the problem, right? So anyway, I felt like my heart was set on that, and that same night I decided to go see my pastor that I grew up with, and he was very, very supportive. He didn't tell me to do one thing or another. He just kind of prayed over me and the baby, Alaska. We didn't even know she was a girl at that point, but kind of prayed over the situation and prayed for peace. And I remember reaching out to a few other people that I really trusted for prayer and just for support, and nobody pressured me to make any kind of decision one way or another, which I really appreciated. And at the end, I know I wanted to be as educated as possible, so I kind of went into each of those options, which I think is really important before you make any decisions. But I looked into abortion, I looked into adoption, I got a ton of paperwork reading about adoption. I even talked to another pastor of mine and asked if they knew any families that were looking to adopt a baby, and there were several families that were interested at that point. So I just tried to be as educated as possible before I made my decision, and I just felt like over the course of the next few weeks, I just could not bear to, I started to build a bond with the little thing that was inside me, and I decided that for me personally, I couldn't go through the abortion. I talked to an abortion therapist. I think it was, her official title was like an after abortion therapist, and she kind of talked to me because I just wanted to hear all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. And she said a lot of women who have struggled with their abortion and dealing with that really hard experience. Sometimes it's hard for women. Sometimes women don't feel a lot of emotion through it. It just depends on the woman. But there were some women that she shared with me, that shared with her, and she shared with me that they experienced a lot of depression 18 to 20 years afterwards, thinking, you know, could I have done it? Or I really could have, and I could have somehow made it work. And then she told me one story about a woman whose mom actually pressured her to get an abortion when she was very, very young. I think she was like 15 or 16. And years later, while she was still dealing with and healing through those emotions, she and her mom cried over it and said that really was such a terrible thing for her to go through. I try to put myself in her shoes and think of if that would maybe be me. And just knowing how sensitive and emotional I was, I didn't know if this was going to be the best decision for me. I really didn't know. I was lost. I wanted someone to make the decision for me. I didn't want to choose one and regret it later. So I kept doing research, but I also kept praying about it. I kept just sitting with myself and thinking about what would be the best outcome. Could I provide for this child? I kept thinking, okay, maybe I can. I kept looking for other people to kind of answer it for me. I would look for signs. And at that point, I just kind of knew that I couldn't give her up. There was just something in me that I knew I couldn't give her up. I couldn't give her to another family, and I couldn't have the abortion. And I obviously decided to keep her. And that was like like the last minute, you know, like I think at a certain point it's harmful for your body to get an abortion, and I waited till like that very last moment. But I remember making the decision. I was so scared I was going to regret it, and so many emotions. But I wrote a lot. I wrote all of my emotions down on paper. I prayed a ton, and I remember just kind of not really wanting to leave the house, not really wanting to do anything. I didn't want anyone to see me. My body started changing and my emotions started changing, and I felt like a completely different person. I felt like a beached whale, okay? Let's be honest. And I didn't want to leave the house because I felt like everyone was staring at me, and I was so big. My body had gotten humongous, and I remember going to my prenatal appointments, and the doctor kept telling me that I was gaining weight. I think I gained like 40, 50 pounds or something like that. I think it was like 60 pounds. I think it was something ridiculous. And I was trying so hard to eat right and eat well, but I was eating for two people, and I'm already really hungry as it is. So anyway, I just remember it being really difficult. I felt like nobody understood. So I decided to keep the baby. I told my parents Thanksgiving Day. My mom was, of course, shocked. My dad was shocked as well. And my sister was still really young, so she found out a little bit later. But, you know, everyone was just kind of processing it. And I think it was a really difficult time for all of us because it came as such a surprise, something that we didn't plan for. But I think over time, it started to mellow out. There were a lot of arguments, and there were just a lot of confusion and emotions, and a lot of just mixed emotions that came and were swirling around finances, responsibility. Am I still going to go to school? How am I going to work? Just a lot of different things. And then also I was just in my first year of college. So my parents are like, what's going to happen with your education? You had a 4-year plan, et cetera, et cetera. And so things just kind of took a 180, and it was scary. My entire life changed within a matter of weeks. And so it was a lot to process. And so once I did make that initial decision that I wanted to keep her and that's what I was going to stick with, I then started to kind of get in that mom mode of, okay, what can I do to be a good mother? I started reading books, I started watching videos, I started to do what any crazy emotional pregnant woman would do and try to educate and equip yourself as much as you can before you know you're going to be a mom. And I think what I learned from that was there is no necessary right time to be a parent, and there's no perfect amount of readiness that you can be when you're about to have a child. Even when people are married and financially stable and in a committed relationship, you know, and they're married, they're happy, which is what I would have wanted ideally before I had gotten pregnant. It's still scary. Nobody's ever really ready to take on another life. And so I was able to kind of understand that. And I remember my mentor, who I was seeing at that time on a weekly basis, she told me, you don't have to have it all. You just have to be enough. You don't have to have all of the resources and all of the finances and all of those baby toys that you see at Target and all of the expensive gadgets and everything, the newest technology. You don't need all of that. Really, all you need is to just be yourself, just to be good enough, and that's all your baby needs. So I took that advice and just kind of ran with it. I told myself, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be enough. I just need to be myself and do the best that I can, because that's, at the end of the day, all that I can do. So anyway, as word kind of spread out, I did hear some of my friends tell me that I was too irresponsible or I wasn't ready to become a mother. Some of the youth leaders from my past church didn't congratulate me or tell me any type of words of support. Some of them stopped talking to me and my parents. And there were some people that I had gone to school with and whatnot that were, you know, just saying a bunch of things. And especially as a hormonal pregnant woman, it was hard not to let all of it get to me. But at the end of the day, I knew that it's not about them. And I tried to remind myself that nothing others do is because of you. And nothing that anyone was saying was about me. It was about their preconceived notions of unplanned pregnancies or my unplanned pregnancy, and maybe their own thoughts or judgments that they had about me. But that shouldn't and should never concern me or you. So I did my thing. I focused on myself. I had a small baby shower, invited just some of my really close friends, and I really appreciated them being there. And I started getting ready for the baby. I moved out of my parents' house, and I moved about 15 minutes away with Alaska's dad. And we lived there before she was born, so a few months before she was born, and we lived there for about a year. Eventually he moved out, and then I moved out as well. I live about 15 minutes away, and he lives like half an hour away. We're working on co-parenting. That's another story. I can do another video on that. But so fast forward July 3rd, I go to my prenatal appointment. I was, I think, like 38 weeks pregnant. I don't really remember. I don't know how some moms can remember all of this information. But it was around there. I was very, very close. And when you get closer and closer to the due date, you start going to your prenatal appointments about weekly, and then every few days or something like that. But I remember I was going weekly. I was going to my weekly appointment, and then the doctor checks me to see if I'm dilated, and I was dilated 1.5 to 2, and I was like, oh my God. And so I didn't really feel it at first. It wasn't that painful. The kind of pre-labor, there are different stages to labor. There's like 3 different stages. I was in like the very, very first stage. So I really wasn't feeling anything. I was walking around. I was doing my thing. I was like cleaning the house. I don't remember. I think I even went like grocery shopping or something that day. And then I went out to dinner later that night. I remember I was at BJ's, the brew house, and I was having dinner with Alaska's dad. And it was midnight, and I was starting to time the contractions, and I was like, I think we need to go to the hospital, because they were getting shorter and shorter and shorter. They were still kind of inconsistent, but they were like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that, where I was starting to get concerned and also in a lot of pain. So we rushed to the hospital. They did admit me pretty much as soon as I got there, but there was nobody there. I remember I got there at like 1. And I was in labor for, I think it was over a day. So it started early that morning, and it went all throughout the day, all throughout the night. I got there, I got the epidural. I got it fairly early on. I think I was like 5 centimeters dilated, but the anesthesiologist was going to leave because it was July 4th holiday. And so I was in labor, I was breathing through it. I had the epidural. By the time I started pushing, and I was at 10, the epidural had worn off. I don't know why, but I had no idea that I could kind of press the IV and get more in my body. I think it wasn't even in my, I wasn't even in like a train of thought at that point, because I was in so much pain and I was pushing. So anyway, I felt all of it while I was pushing. And that was July 4th. And then in the morning on July 4th at 11:30 in the morning, Alaska was born, and she was screaming, she was crying, she was a bloody mess, and I was crying because I was emotional. And anyway, it was just, I still remember it. I don't remember a lot of what happened that night. I remember walking around the hospital for like hours because it was helping the labor process go faster. But I remember when she came and they washed her and took care of her. I remember she had jaundice for a while, so she was in the hospital for a little bit longer, and they put her in this little incubator thing, and that was the last place I wanted to see her in. But I remember how small her little newborn diapers were, and they were adorable, and it was really tiny. I remember being able to bring her home and putting her in the car seat, and it was just a lot of really, really good memories. But I do remember not feeling connected with her. I remember not feeling love towards her. And I started to think, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I'm a terrible person. What's going on? I remember being so scared that I didn't have a connection to my child, my baby. And so I did a little bit of research. I went online and I just looked up a few different articles, just trying to see if this was normal or not. I didn't even tell anyone. And it was normal. I remember reading this article, and the first few lines were, so you just had a baby and you don't necessarily feel connected to him or her. Think about it though. This is a stranger coming into your life. It's your child, but it's still a stranger. You still have to get to know them. They still have to get to know you. And it's just a process, so be patient and take time. And if it goes on for too long, those feelings of unconnectedness, it might be something bigger. But I think that it's very, very normal for the first few weeks to go through those stages. And I remember struggling with postpartum depression. Well, I think they call it like baby blues or something, and then it lasted for a little bit longer, and I just remember not wanting to pick her up, not wanting to hold her, not wanting to be around her, not wanting to do anything. I couldn't even feel it. I was just so heavy on emotion. I was crying all the time. I was angry, I was upset, I was frustrated. I was thinking, I don't want to do this. I was so young, like I was just thinking all of these crazy thoughts, like, how did I even get here? And eventually they faded away. They still come up when Alaska has tantrums. I'm just kidding. But they faded away. The really scary thoughts faded away. And eventually I began to build a relationship with her. And the chest-to-chest method was really, really good, even for dads. Just holding your newborn against your naked chest and their naked chest, just being able to kind of synchronize with breathing and emotions and bonding. I think that helped a lot. So I really recommend that. But I just want moms to know that you're not alone. And if you're struggling with any of those emotions of not feeling connected or just up and down hormones after having a child, even if it's a little bit afterwards, and just settling in with being a new parent, whether it's your first or second or third child, it's a different experience every single time. And don't be hard on yourself. There's a lot of parent guilt out there, that you need to do everything right and your kid can't watch TV and you need to eat the best foods and you're supposed to love your child as soon as it comes out. And it like that Hallmark moment where they put a baby on some woman's chest and she's crying and everyone's happy and smiling, and I didn't have that, and I felt like there was something seriously wrong with me because that's not how it was. And so I just want to let you know, if that's something that's happened to you or it does happen in the future, just keep in mind that you're not alone and that it's okay. And it's okay, whatever you're feeling, your emotions are valid. Even if you feel like you're very hormonal or you're emotional or you are struggling with postpartum depression, all of your feelings and emotions are valid. They're also not permanent either. A lot of them are temporary and they come and go, but just know that you are strong and that you are empowered. If you are a mom or you're pregnant right now, you've had kids or you're thinking of having kids, or maybe you don't want kids at all, but you know that there are moms around you that are your close friends or family, that being a mom is so empowering. Just knowing that you gave birth to a child, and I breastfed Alaska for 2.5 years. 2 years. No, a year and a half. And I breastfed Alaska for a year and a half. My body was literally giving sustenance to her body and keeping her alive and healthy and well. And I think regardless of anything that was going on in my life, separating from her dad, moving out, losing my job, losing my house, I felt like my drive was so much different because I was a mom. And I don't love being a mom 24/7. Sometimes it drains me and I'm literally so exhausted. I want to be left alone to sleep and to eat strawberry cheesecake ice cream and have my Chipotle and just be alone and have peace and quiet in the house for literally just 20 minutes. And there are some days where I look at Alaska and I'm just fulfilled. But not every single day is like that. And even though people will tell you that motherhood is the most rewarding thing that they've done, they still have days where they're on the floor picking up Cheerios and stepping on Legos and crying their eyes out because it literally is the most tiring and exhausting thing. And they haven't had sleep in, 3 years like me. But it definitely is a journey, and I always ask parents, does it get easier? And people always tell me it doesn't necessarily get people always tell me it doesn't necessarily get easier, it just gets different. There are different struggles. I was talking to a mom earlier today, and she was like, instead of them running around and taking their clothes off, now I'm wondering questions like, are they smoking? And so I think that every parent has a different journey, and it's up to them to decide what is best for their child. Nobody knows your child better than you do. And so when it comes to important decisions like breastfeeding and not breastfeeding, and how much TV and what kind of different media you want to expose your child to, or movies or toys or games or just different things like that, it's up to you, and you know your child best, especially parents who have special needs children. I have all the respect in the world for you. I can't even imagine how much of a struggle that may be on a daily basis, but I can imagine a little bit of how rewarding it truly is. So I really think that mothers are the real superheroes in this world. So now Alaska's 3. I am co-parenting with her dad, and I think that so far it's been a whirlwind. It has not been easy by any means. I think that a lot of mommy blogs and accounts and different sources of social media platforms out there really show the good side of mothering and parenting. And I remember seeing happy pictures of families and families going out together and just spending time together, especially during the holidays like Halloween or, dressing up, and Christmas, being around the tree and just being able to celebrate those important traditions together. I felt so left out. I felt so alone, but I think that also I wouldn't have had the bond and the relationship that I have with Alaska without being a single mom and raising her on my own for some time, and then her being with her dad. And I think that it gives me a break as well, just to kind of recuperate. I really think though, without those times of bonding, just her and me on Christmas, for my birthday, for Halloween, July 4th, Valentine's Day, just Alaska and me, I wouldn't have had that bond if I was happily married, or if I was in a happy, committed relationship and financially stable and all those things that I feel like are ideal. I wouldn't have had that bond shared with her, and maybe she wouldn't have been able to see who I really am. And I think that's really important. I think that these struggles and the roller coaster times really build character, and I think that that's where you grow the most. And I've not grown in my entire life like I have these past several years. And who knows, I don't think I would be the person I am today if I haven't gone through all of the scary thoughts, like how am I going to put food on the table for Alaska? How am I going to work extra hours and still go to school so I can get my bachelor's? But I also need to pay rent, but I also need to keep the house clean, and I come home so late because I have to work and I have to go to school, and how am I going to pay for babysitting, and what happens when Alaska goes to preschool, and just all of those scary things, and am I spending enough time with her because I'm going to work and I'm going to school, and just those scary thoughts. And at the end of the day, the thing that just kind of brings me back to center is praying and letting it go, and just realizing that I'm not in control. I'm not in control of what happens in Alaska's life, and I'm barely in control of a lot of what happens in mine. I can choose my daily decisions and focus on what's going on today and not let my anxiety get the best of me. And sometimes that's all I can do. When I felt really, really overwhelmed, I remember thinking, okay, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do right now? I can make some dinner, put it on the table, maybe put on a show for Alaska to watch so I can get some homework done, and go to bed. Tomorrow's a new day. That might be all I need to do for the rest of the day, and then I'll let tomorrow just kind of worry about itself. So I'll kind of break it down. What do I need to do right now, instead of future tripping and thinking about, oh my goodness, what's going to happen a week from now, a year from now, where are we going to be 2 years from now? And just those simple things like losing my house and losing my job put me in such a mode of fear that it it put me in such a mode of fear that I truly learned to trust God and also just let go of all of these things in general, and just try to take it easy, but also take more serious recognition of my responsibilities as well, not only as an adult, but as a mother as well. It's difficult learning to be a young adult at 22 and also become a mother who wants to be inspiring and influential to her child. So yeah, it's definitely been a whirlwind. But that's a little bit of my experience of having a little one at such a young age, my birth story, and then some personal experiences of being a mother and struggling with some postpartum depression and just those crazy emotions after having a child. And I really hope that this video helps even just one person out there, just to remind you that whatever you're struggling with, you're not alone. And I went through different therapists when I found out I was pregnant, after I had Alaska, right after I had Alaska, and for several years afterwards. I think that it helped me so much to talk through my emotions. I still believe that talking through something is the best way of healing and then also letting go of it, just putting it out there. I feel like it loses some of its hold on you when you share that with someone else that you trust. And there's no shame in getting help if you are struggling or if you're having suicidal thoughts or tendencies. I think that it can be so scary to be a new mom, and you need to have a lot of support. So if you're struggling with anything that I mentioned or something that I haven't mentioned at all, please feel free to reach out to me. I can leave all of my social media down below. Send me a message, shoot me a DM, just any way you can to reach me. I'm on Snapchat as well, and I can always add you guys back. I am public, so you can see everything and send me messages. But please reach out, even if it is just to one person, and let them know how you're feeling, and just know that you're never alone and that you are so, so loved. And I'm here if anyone ever wants to talk. And I wish you guys all the best. Thank you so much for staying to the end of the video and hearing my story. And I hope that it inspired at least one of you out there listening. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.